Right, so I'd love to give you a summary of what we've covered in the intuitive golf experience. So I would just do this off the cuff and just go through, and hopefully I will share things with you that will remind you of what we discussed, that therefore will be a good recap for you. And if you remember, one of the underlying messages is the fact that there is no such thing as advanced. There are only the basics, and knowing and applying those basics in more detail. So the value of going back through it here is that you get to hear those basics again. Now, it will be ultimately your choice whether you buy into that concept, whether you buy into the idea, the belief that actually the advanced part, the magic, is actually something you already have, i.e. this magnificent machine that you have, regardless of whatever restrictions, limitations, injuries you think you have. There is still a magnificent machine there that is quite complex and super advanced in terms of what it does. You have a brain which orchestrates all of this, which is far more intelligent than any machine we're ever going to see, in my opinion. If you buy into that, then I hope that will encourage you to stick with the basics. Because why would you move on from that if you haven't mastered them? If they truly are the foundations that enable you to move more effectively, that enable you to create a repeating goal swing, why would you go past them if they've not been laid properly? In the analogy of the building of the house, you would not start to build the walls if the foundations were not sitting at the right depth, at the right level, etc. It just wouldn't happen. And if it did, then that building's going to crack, have subsidence, and need constant repair thereafter. And that's a very good analogy for the golf swing. If those foundations are not worked on, constant fixing is going to be required of the golf swing. As I said to you, one of the worst things that can happen is when you're fixing, you find something that works for you, because it will generally work quickly and you'll see a difference and you think, wow, that's incredible, I'm now hitting the ball better. That's one of the worst things that can happen, because you get addicted to that process, and it means you may not have stuck with the very basics that you need to work with. So I hope that's the underlying message. There is no such thing as advanced. There are only basics, and knowing and applying those basics in more detail. Intuitive means being able to use something without special knowledge, having a sense that something's real, that something's true, that something's right, but you don't have to have special knowledge to use it, because again, the special knowledge is inside. That's why it's called intuitive golf. Okay, so take those two key messages and let's see if we can build upon that. So let me just recap for you some of it. So we're dealing with the musculoskeletal system. From a movement perspective, that's what we're dealing with. That musculoskeletal system is going to help you control and move and create shape in your body. It's going to support the structure of the body and have shape to it that we want. The muscles are going to pull on that musculoskeletal system to move it to the places we want to move it to. The brain is sending those messages through the brainstem, through the spinal cord, out to those muscles to get you to move in the way you want to move. There is an optimal structure. There is a neutral, might be a better word, neutral structure. The more we can tap into that, what it leads us to is less compensation. If you think about a golf swing when it's feeling difficult, when it's feeling hard work to try and hit the ball well, you may hit the ball well, but maybe feels hard work. There's generally compensation going on in there. You're having to do something to try and get that club face square at the bottom of the arc to hit that ball well. My belief is when you can learn to use the structure in a way that it's designed to work and build that into the golf swing, you will have far less compensation going on. When you have far less compensation going on, you have less chance of injury. And so that's the route I want to take you down. So if we think of that musculoskeletal system, we say, okay, we're building a foundation. Where did that foundation begin? Well, it begins with your feet. And you may remember that in each foot there are 26 bones and 33 joints. Again, they are complex, incredibly clever foundations that you're standing on. When you are standing on them in a neutral place and you're evenly balanced between the two sides, back to front, outside to inside, and you're nicely even balanced, the tripod foot is your best way of thinking about that. So the 2 points underneath the you want to call the knuckle of the big toe, the little toe, and the heel. Those 3 points form that tripod, and when you can feel the pressure evenly balanced across them, you're starting to get into a more neutral place. That's when other things above will start to be nice and even. You know, you might start to see your pelvis being, or your knees being fairly even, the pelvis, the ribs, the shoulder, the eyes, okay, or at least the ears being fairly even. When you're sitting on that structure properly there, you'll start to see that. If you're tending to favor one side, you might see other compensations going on. So finding that starting place is a good place. When you're sitting on that structure properly, then you can start to use all those joints and all those bones. When they start to move, they're moving in line with your natural anatomy, then the ankle starts to work, the knee starts to work, the pelvis starts to work, the ribs start to work, and the spine starts to work all the way through that swing. I have a wire here, by the way, so I'm being slightly careful not to catch that as I move. But hopefully that's helping you to hear me clearer. So when we sit on that structure of the feet properly, it gives us the best chance of everything else working above it. If we skip that part, if we set up and we're too far on our heels or we're too far on our toes, we skip that part, we've almost, well, in simple terms, we have cut off part of that magnificent structure in the feet. That now means in a moment you move, you're having to compensate. The moment you move, you're having to try and find another way of moving to support you because you haven't got the structure in the feet right to begin with. So that was our starting point. I've given you various exercises to do with that. I'm not going to go through it again now, but be aware of that starting point. You're going to form your golfing posture from there. I suggested to you probably the best way of doing that is to think about the front of the hips here and just feel like you just crease there, and then that will naturally bring you into, so from here you crease there and that will naturally bring you into a flexed knee position. The knee will come forward down the seam of your trousers, or your calf will be slightly leaning forward rather than dead vertical, slightly leaning forward. But now you start to become aware of the pelvis, and I like to describe it as this oval shape. You might just say your belt line, your waist, whatever you want to say. This area here sitting above the feet is a good reference point for you here, okay? Just a sense of it being above. When it is, your feet will start to feel alive. When it sits outside of your feet, you'll feel like the energy has gone from the feet. When it's too far forward this way, you'll feel like there might be energy, but it feels hard to control. It feels like you're going to wobble. Here, in this place here, you'll feel alive. The pelvis will be over the feet and you'll feel ready to move. Now, because the pelvis is the midpoint of the body, it has a huge influence on where weight travels. So what we're looking to learn to do initially is learn to use the lower half of the body, the feet, the legs, the pelvis, to be able to learn how to move them in the right direction, should we say, and also at the right time. Ultimately, when you learn, try and do it this way, when you learn to move the pelvis in the right way at the right time, what happens is the shoulders, the arms, and the club follow. They come into the golf shot last, and when they do that, you have much more control of that club head. Okay, the club head becomes much more stable. Because we're holding the golf club, it's very easy to start to begin the downswing from the shoulders and the arms. And we pull here, and then the body, the pelvis and the legs are thrown out of the way. Now they're not controlling that movement. The hands and arms have taken over, and you really are now having to compensate a lot, and your chances of timing that correctly are limited. So we're really interested in starting from balanced place. We're really interested in learning to control and move that pelvis on top of the feet to be able to control the rest of the swing. When you do that, so now for me as a right-handed golfer, when I swing to the right, if I can learn to move my pelvis to the right, I will start to feel more weight, more pressure through the right foot against the ground. Okay. When I do that, and I have kept my pelvis above my feet as I do that, again, rather than here. This is now I've gone behind my feet line, okay? I'm not going to be able to use my feet anywhere near the same way anymore. Therefore, if I can't use my feet and I can't use my legs, where would I go? I'll go somewhere else. I'll go back to the hands and arms to get me back to the ball. That's not going to be effective. When I can learn to use that pelvis above my feet here, I feel that pressure, the weight has shifted to my right side here. And because it's above, now it's easy to use my legs to shift the weight now back to the left side. And then it shifts back to the left side. Now again, from here, as it shifts back to the left side, as I come through, my pelvis is still above my feet. It has not spun out too early and come away from my feet over here, because again, if it does, it's harder for me to control the shot. Not impossible, but again, we're all about reducing compensation and making it easier, okay? And equally, I'm not here. I'm not bringing my pelvis forward onto my toes and up onto my toes, which again can happen quite a lot here. From there, I'm not turning, I'm not controlling from the ground again. So we're looking to work with this musculoskeletal system we have. We're looking to understand where neutral is to begin with, where balance is to begin with. Optimum movement requires, if I want to hit something in this direction, I need to bring some weight this way first. I need to know how to move my pelvis and my legs to get me to a place where I have shifted weight, but I'm in control. When I shift weight properly, again, I'm going to find it easier to turn through my spine. I just want to make sure you can still hear the microphone that I've turned through my spine. And remember, when I've done that well, there's actually going to be a slight side bend of my spine going on. So let me just demonstrate that fully here. There, I'm going to have a side bend of my spine here. Whereas if I don't control if my pelvis, for example, comes over here to my left, you can see now there's no side bend to the left here of my spine. My spine is now leaning across to the right. Again, that's not going to help my downswing. So watch what happens now. When I learn to move my pelvis properly, I shift my weight to my right side. I have a side bend. When I shift my pelvis back, I now get a side bend to the right. It's those combination of things that then allow the hands and arms to come in last, but also very importantly, they come in consistently on plane in the correct path for you to be able to hit a good, solid shot. So what we spoke about as well is that many of the concerns or ideas you have about the golf swing of what you need to fix, what you need to do, all these type of things, I believe they will become less of a concern and potentially even dissolve when you learn to move your body properly. So whether you're worried about having lag in the swing, whether you're worried about the fact you come over the top, whether you're worried about the fact that you release early, whether you feel like you come from the inside too much or the outside, whatever it is, any of those concerns, once you learn to control this structure properly, move the weight properly and have the pelvis over the feet throughout the movement here, then you're going to start to see those other things just become less of a concern. Now I want to make the point about the transition and follow through, because this is an important one, that when we have shifted our weight properly here, we are looking for the feet and the pelvis to shift across to the left there. And there is an element, I want to exaggerate this slightly, that there is an element where that shifts across pretty much before the hands and arms are dropping down. Now, that's not literally, but we want that sensation that here, now I'm solidly over that left foot, and then my hands and arms are already in position. They can come down nice and quickly into that golf ball. So again, when I am moving my lower half correctly, when I'm moving in a way that my feet can always work, there's always energy and life in those feet to push against the ground. Remember, the foot goes through that supination and pronation stages. When I can do that, then the rest of my body is going to work much, much better anyway. So I hope that's a good recap on those points there. As I said, you've got many, many exercises. Some of the exercises that are more related to golf, you might want to put your hands against the wall from your posture position here in your posture, hands against the wall, and practice moving the lower half underneath, feeling that weight shift. You may want to stand with your backside against the wall and rolling the right cheek onto the wall and then the left cheek onto the wall. Again, as you roll, you'll feel the weight shifting from side to side. Now, I'm talking about weight shift. Don't get sloppy with that and then allow the weight shift to go too far, okay? Because that means you've actually gone to the outside of the foot, which means that you haven't got the 26 bones and 33 joints positioned in a way to be able to work properly. It means you've got to wait until you get back to there before you can get the benefit of it. So it's not just a case of, oh, I'll just shift my weight more. It's about learning to control that. One of the best ways that you can do that is, again, you use the power of the mind and the body together. You go through this exercise here and you close your eyes, because I believe you have a good understanding of what you want. Get into a good posture. Be aware of the tripod feet to begin with. Close your eyes and imagine what you want. Imagine, put your focus on this pelvis area and imagine it moving across and on top of your feet here. Now imagine your feet pushing that pelvis back across there and turning on top of the feet there. And then you'll notice the top half following that. Close your eyes and practice that multiple times. You have the ability to change your movement and your golf swing without even hitting a ball. Just by doing that exercise every day at home, rehearsing that with your eyes closed, going over it and over it again, you will start to, you are literally remember, the brain, you're sending that message to the muscles to get them to work. You are training yourself to do well. Practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. So make sure you do perfect practice if you want to get perfect results. I don't like the word perfect, but if you want to see change, make sure in the practice that you're creating change. And that exercise with the eyes closed is a very powerful way for you to do that. Okay, I think we've covered some of the main parts. I'll just tell you some of the other exercises we did. I think without doubt the most important bits we've done, but some of the other ones we did, remember we did it because if there was a pattern, it's that you all know what to do, but you might drift into old habits and not realize you've done it. Because with the basics of the essential, you build from there. So if you don't start on your tripod feet in an evenly balanced way, everything else becomes harder. So it's worth having some check there. And we talked about a little exercise where you just step from side to side. You form the best posture you can and you just step from side to side. By doing that, you'll probably find you're going to step your best when you are on top of your feet. If you use back here on your heels, you'll probably find the stepping will feel funny. So by doing that, make sure you don't just stand dead straight and step. Fold at the hips here and step from side to side. That may be something you want to do. You can lead that into the golf swing as well, because it may help you get the legs working. We did this one where you set up, you bring your back foot forward and you step in to the turn. Again, if you're struggling to shift weight, that could help you. If you're struggling to shift weight on the way through, you bring your front foot forward, you step in and turn through to again help the weight shift forward. So they're little things just to help you, but the exercise of trying to do it the optimal way, I think, is probably the higher, most important one I would suggest. With the eyes shut, that's going to be very important as well. Okay, let me just recap on a couple of the other bits quickly. The putting and the pitching, we talked about the same. Or putting, first of all, still be aware of the tripod feet. I gave you the reference of imagining that your shoulder blades are being pulled back and down a little bit when you putt. When you do that, that connects your arms to the spine better, and it means that when you then go to do your putting stroke, you may feel the structure of the spine and the arms and the shoulders work a bit more together, a bit more as a pendulum. So for some of you may find that idea of putting the shoulder blades back together quite a nice one. You could just simply feel like the top of your arms are closer to the side of your body. That could give you the same effect. Just doing that could have the same effect. That may be an easier thought for you to have. Now I'll go from that. There's one thing we didn't discuss, but you may find, based on what I just said, they're useful. Because that structure I just spoke about is relevant in the full swing as well. When you're gripping the club, when you're putting your hands on the club, there could be some value in, instead of having the club on the ground and putting your hands on here, or putting one hand at a time, whatever there could be value in having your arm next to your body here when you put your hand on. So let me just show you that from both ways. Here, have your arm beside there, okay? So your arm literally touching the side and then put it on there. Now, why is that useful? Same with the other hand, by the way. Arm to the side, bring the hand on. The reason that's useful is that, again, I'm more likely to have my shoulder blades back and down and my shoulders sitting in a fairly neutral position. When I'm here, put it in, again, I'll exaggerate slightly, there's more chance I'm going to rotate my shoulder and put my hand on here, which has now pulled my scapula, my shoulder blade, it's extended it, okay? Which, again, some people do well with, but it's taken you away from that neutral structure rather than bringing you in. So that's something we didn't discuss, but I just want to raise that you could do that for your putting. You could feel like your top of your arms are a little close to your side, not tensely, just sitting there. And when you form your grip, you may find that helpful to hold the club up here and do it that way. And then when you set up to the ball, you may feel that when you set up to the ball, that the top of your arms are a little nearer to the side of your body, which in itself, and this is the thing I need to mention for the rest of it, it may feel like you've slightly altered your setup position. You may feel like, based on the other changes of having the tripod feet, you may feel you need to be a little closer to the ball. The change could be different for all of you. So just be aware you may need to change your position to the ball, in which case do so. Don't say, oh, I'm too far away from the ball, and then just do that, because then you'll lose the very structure you've built. So I wanted to add that part. For the pitching, we spoke about if you just to stand here with your right hand only for a right-handed golfer and just practice swinging the hand as if you're throwing, you'll find automatically that actually your weight will sit, your pelvis will sit over the top of your feet and your feet will be nice and alive. You wouldn't throw and go like here, okay, or there, okay? You would just sit here naturally, you just crease at the hip and have that hand in that position. So we talked about that. Then we talked about imagining that the club head is actually your hand, and when you set up, you just simply focus on letting the club head swing as if it was your hand, okay? So if it's a short one, you're only going to swing your hand back and forwards a little bit as if you're throwing. If it's a longer one, you'll swing your hand backwards and forwards a little bit more. Having that external focus of the club head and stop trying to control everything else is very powerful, and that can be used in many different ways, but it's very good for the pitching. And that idea that to gain control, you've got to give up control. So just focus on the club head. You just concentrate on moving the club head. Let everything else inside that, the feet, the knees, the hips, the spine, the arms, let them be controlled subconsciously. So you give up control and then you'll gain better control. So that was our pitching focus. You can alter the club face as well a little bit. And then for our sand play, it was really about, again, which is a theme generally, which is going to help you learn. Remember, you don't learn at your best, in my belief, by trying to do things right. You need to be prepared to go either side of what you think is right sometimes in order to have the experience to learn better. The bunker lesson we did was really effective in that you put a line in the sand and you just walk along the sand, striking the sand, and focus on playing the sand, not the ball. How much sand do you need to take to play the shot you want to play in front of you? And learn from it. So when you hit the sand, have I taken the sand too early, too steeply? Learn from it. Have I taken the sand too late, too shallow, whatever it is? Learn from that feedback of the sand and then incorporate that into the shot. So that, again, you're really using a natural way of learning, an intuitive way of learning, rather than trying to be exact and right with it, okay? And that applies, by the way, I think we said this as well, that if you find yourself getting stuck and you're not sure, am I moving my pelvis right above my feet or not? exaggerate. Find different places. Go, well, let me go too far. Let me go here. And you, right, now I can feel it better. Let me not go far enough. Let me lock this down and see what it feels like then. Yeah, that's too tight. Again, by trying to be too right, sometimes we miss the learning. So don't be frightened of trying different things. Same with, you might say, am I on my feet properly here? Well, let me just push my bum out forward. What does that do? I can feel my heels now more. Okay, let me straighten up a bit more. I can't really feel my feet now as much. They're not as alive. So be prepared to go to too much place, what we call too much, too little. Experiment between those places, and that's going to help you through the whole experience. So I think that's the key points. I just wanted you to have that, so you've got a reference to go back to that I hope is useful for you. As you know, you've got the option to send me some messages anyway, and good luck. I hope that's been of value to you. Thank you.